Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutcher Gaming and the last video update for the Reign of Arrows Champion testing. This is the final stage of what I would want my character to be like after week 1 of the league. Now I played Reign of Arrows this league, but I transitioned away really early to a Tornado Shot, so I didn't really have a good base to look at what gear I would have. So what I've done is gone back the league before, when I played the character on a Raider, and I've looked at week 1 and what sort of gear I had, and I've essentially replicated it. Now, it's not cheap, but the idea is that because this build is so cheap to get going and farming red maps, that it's not going to take you too long to save the 20 or 30 divines that you need to build the character. Now, that's a rough estimation because it's very difficult to know what's going to happen next league. And economy's in a bit of a state at the moment because it's near the end of the league. But there'll be a POB with the character. It does have a crucible bow, but it's not a good one. It has a tiny bit of attack speed and cold damage, and then it has crit chance and accuracy. I don't need the crit chance because I'm capped. Minus accuracy and crit chance. I do not need the crit chance because I'm capped with buffs. So essentially, our crucible bow gives us 4% attack speed and 4 to 6 cold damage. So nothing to write home about. When I bring a league start guide out, if this is a character, I will go through how to craft every single one of these items. But it's nothing complicated. There's no omniscience. There's just a perseverance belt and some really decent rares and some jewels that we go through when we go through the tree. Now, I've built this character to map. So I have lessened damage to get movement speed and quality of life. So if you wanted this to be a hybrid character, I'll show you how you can tweak the character. But what I want to do from now on is either make a mapper or a bosser. So this is going to be a mapper. It can get you 4 pinnacle bosses done, no problem. But then after that, I'm just mapping. I'm selling all my boss maps, my keys and everything. I just want to map because that's what I enjoy doing. So this character would excel at something like boss rushing. So where you've got a straightforward map where you just want to get to the end as quickly as possible but do some damage, this character would work really well. It gets about 200% movement speed once it gets going in the map, and it's just really fun to play. So we'll just pull up a map and we'll just go and showcase it. I'll see if I've got a fairly linear map like Strand that we can go and run. I'm hoping we do. So we'll just run this map because it's just going to be an Alch and Go strategy. The only thing that sticks this build like any other crit elemental build is if you get resistant to crit rare enemies or cycling damage reduction. They'll take a bit longer to get down, but you're so tanky it really shouldn't matter. So even without any flasks up, we've got 48k armor, 20k evasion. We've got our fortify. When you got adrenaline, you get less physical damage taken. When we pop flasks, we're nearly 60k armor, 33k evasion. The only thing I need to work on is chaos res, which I would do in a league situation, but at the moment I'm happy with 13% and it hasn't caused me any issues. So we'll go in. Now, I'm not running a boss rush in Atlas. It's Blight, but we just assume that we were just looking to get through the map as quickly as possible. So we're not even going to pop altars. We're just literally going to run, kill stuff on the way. We'll take the essences. Why not? So cold and chill, freeze resist. A lot of our damage is cold, so that can cause the essence monster to take a couple of seconds. So again, you're just running through. We'll do shrieking. So all we're doing is running through and just, standing still because nothing's really going to kill us. All those might, to be fair. And then we'll get on our merry way. The only thing I would like to do, but the Watcher's Eye one is not for sale, is get a Watcher's Eye with haste and some sort of damage. But they're super expensive at the moment, so I've not bothered. But that would give you phasing, so you don't have to worry about running into enemies. And if you could get it with something like crit multi or crit damage, then it'd be awesome. So again, we're already at the boss, so we'll just run through, kill these mobs, drop our vile rain of arrows, just stand on top of the boss because it's got no chance of killing us. Map done. And that's what you do. And I really enjoy this character. It has the speed of the Raider, if not more, and it has defenses where you honestly, in most maps, do not need to worry about anything other than on-death effects, and if you don't have a lot of chaos resistance, stuff like poison. So we'll run through the skill tree. Now, I have actually changed it since I created the video because I had Vile Pact in my tree and I had Leech down here. I've actually tweaked it a little bit and gone up here because I was struggling with no regen maps. This tiny bit of mana gained per enemy hit means I don't have to worry about no regen maps. So this is the tree for my level 93 character. Let's say it differs slightly from my other Reign of Arrows builds because we're trying to utilize speed a little bit more. So I'll actually run through the whole tree in case there's people that have never played this build. Major nodes, life, projectile damage, increased effective onslaught because we have perma onslaught, and it gives you more armor and evasion during onslaught. And these nodes here, again, give you more armor and evasion, more onslaught effect. These nodes are pretty big for critical strike chance because it blinds enemies, which increases your evasion. And then you can take this mastery to get crit on blinded enemies. So overall, this is a massive boost to critical strike chance. It's about 125% crit chance just for these 4 nodes. Really, really nice. We have 1 cluster jewel. It's not really specific, so don't look to get this exact cluster jewel. This is more just to get 2 jewel sockets into the build. So I've gone for elemental damage and increased lightning damage and effective lightning elements. You could just go for an attack cluster, a bow cluster, basically anything that gives you nodes that add damage to your build and make it worthwhile coming to get these 2 jewel sockets. We'll come back to the jewels in a minute. We're taking life here and then 50 life just for even more life. This is where I now go where I haven't on my previous builds because this is a mapper. So it's evasion and movement speed. We go up here and get all the projectile, crit chance and crit multi. We then pass through life and we pick up 15% maximum life if there's no life on armor because we've deliberately not rolled life on the armor. Then more movement speed and suppression and LE damage. And then some mana and strength and int that you'll probably need because you won't have the mana otherwise. Out to all these juicy bow and projectile nodes. Up to get our reservation and increase effective auras. We take life and evasion, and then we take 15% chance to suppress spell damage if we've got evasion on all the gear, which you should have. Through to Forces of Nature, 10% LE Pen, pretty big. This mastery, which I'm hoping they don't change, is massive. 25% chance to treat enemy elemental resistances as inverted. So on bosses where they might have 60%, every 4th hit they have got minus 60. And it also means you don't have to worry as much about exposure. Elemental exposure is something that you'd always historically try and get in an elemental attack build. This lessens the effect of it. Like exposure would still be more damage overall, but it's probably quite negligible unless you're a raider where you get 20%. So then we come and get all our crit bow nodes along with increases to projectile speed applied to damage. We take these for attack speed and to cap our accuracy. Brutal Restraint we'll come on to in a minute. And then crit nodes here and crit multi against unique enemies. Now I need to check what sort of shock I'm getting on enemies. If we're getting sort of 20 to 30% shock, I'm going to be better off taking the 50% increase effect of non-damaging ailments. But either or is going to give you more damage. We get these just to give us a bunch of spell suppression. And then we take spell suppress is lucky to increase our spell suppression even more. So our spell suppress is at 95%. And you can get to 100, but you need to find 20 on gear somewhere. So this is just a nice fix for me. I don't care about being 100% in softcore. If there's the odd massive spell from a boss that gets through my 95% spell suppression, so be it. I'll take the death. And then we go up here and we take mana per enemy hit, which I've just added in because of the issues I had with the no regen. Leech, and then instant leech, and then life. And as I say, there is places you can go on the tree once you level up further because I'm only 93. Personally, I'd either take these mark nodes here because they're huge single target damage, or you just fill out more life. You can get life here, life and evasion here. We can go and get life here. So you're going to end up with a character around 5k life and really, really good defenses. So the only other thing to run through is just the jewels on the build. Now, there could be better trees. This is just what I've done, but I've not really spent hours in POB checking node against node. It might be you can eke out, more damage or quality of life. So I've got Watcher's Eye with increased attack damage while affected by precision. What I wanted is this along with phase in where I have haste, but I couldn't find it. The only person that had available didn't answer my whisper. And then Ancestral Vision just to cap off my ailment avoidance. There's obviously lots of other ways to do this. This is just a kind of easy fix I've gone for. And then lastly, we have a Brutal Restraint. Again, this isn't the one I wanted. I wanted one with 15 to 20% movement speed on the nodes, but no one responded to my whispers. So I just went through my stash and had a look what I had. Brutal Restraint's really good for loads of different bow nodes. You could put a Lethal Pride in here. Look to get double damage and it will solve issues you might have with strength. But the big boost of Lethal Pride is that you can get Intimidate, but we're a champion, so we intimidate enemies on full life anyway. So really you're just looking for double damage mods, but that would be very, very good as an alternative and realistically probably better. But we don't need the damage. We're just going for quality of life and speed. So as you can see from this, we've got kind of chance to blind, crit strike chance, increase effective auras, crit strike chance again, projectile damage, non-curse auras again. We could go and get accuracy if we needed to in a frenzy charge. And then again, chance to blind on hit. So with all our blind nodes, we're pretty much 100% chance to blind. But you really only need about 10% because of the amount of arrows that are going to hit an enemy. And that's kind of the setup for the tree. With your ascendancy, first to sight, last of all, mandatory on a champion. It's kind of the reason you pick champion. I know people say it's a fortify, but if it didn't have this node, I wouldn't run a champion. So this gives us adrenaline. It gives us intimidation on enemies that are full life, and it permanently intimidates them. You remove any ailments when you get adrenaline, but we're immune anyway. And you do recover quarter of your life. So it means when you do lose half your life, you get quarter of it back straight away, which is quite nice. And then all these buffs from being fortified and then fortification. And then here, this is another massive node, 30% increase effect of non-curse auras. And we get no reservation for banner skills, so we can run a free Defiance banner. And that covers off the skill tree for the character. So we'll go on to the gem links first. Now, because it's a mapping strategy, I don't want to waste time putting ballistas down, so we're not using any. It also makes it much easier to fit in our Corrupted Fever setup to proc adrenaline. We don't have to weapon swap or anything like that. So in my 5 link, which you could 6 link if you wanted, I've got Frenzy, Power Charge on Crit to get power charges, Burning Arrow, Inspiration, and then Mana Forge Arrow support. This setup does quite a bit of damage because of Frenzy and then Burning Arrow. We get our Frenzy charges from Frenzy and obviously power charges from Power Charge on Crit. So it just means we don't need to worry anyway about generating these charges. They're just going to happen automatically because if you check our Frenzy here on W, it procs pretty regularly and it only has to do 1 every 10 seconds to keep your charges up. So you're always going to have those up. We have a Flame Dash just for movement speed. And then we've got Determination, Defiance Banner, Precision. And then we have Haste in here. This, once it gets to level 20, will give me a bit more movement speed and attack speed. This is less damage than something like Anger or Wrath, but I'm more bothered about how quickly I attack and how quickly I get through the map. We have Life Tap support linked to Mark on Hit and Sniper's Mark. And then we have Life Tap, Corrupting Fever at level 13 and Second Wind. And that gives me a Corrupting Fever of 2,300, which is over half my life, which is what it needs to be. So if you've missed my previous videos, this is a way we proc adrenaline on a champion. We just hit Corrupting Fever, we get adrenaline, and then we get 25% of our life back. And then you just hit a life flask and you are back to full. And you have to do that every 20 seconds. You don't need to do it. Your damage is going to be absolutely fine without it, but it's an absolute huge boost to movement speed, damage, and attack speed. It also gives you a little bit of a physical damage reduction as well, which just helps even more. And we do have a Molten Shell somewhere. Here it is. We've only got 1 socket, so it's just on left click. And then the 6th link is Rain of Arrows, which is the Vile version, just for more damage on bosses. Mirage Archer, increased crit damage, Trinity, Inspiration, LE damage with attacks. Obviously, you can upgrade this to, Awakened if you wanted to. You might decide you don't want to use Mirage Archer, but we don't need more damage. And Mirage Archer, when you're just running through normal maps, can kill most of the enemies for you. I just think it's something you should never, ever be dropping. Flask, we've got Jade Flask with increased evasion, Diamond Flask with increased crit, Armor Flask, Granite Flask with increased armor, Quicksilver Flask with attack speed, and then just a Divine Bleeding Life Flask. The only thing I don't have on this build, because I've given up my jewel socket for this jewel here, is Corrupted Blood Immunity, because I wanted to get that Brutal Restraint into the build. So in terms of gear, it's Perseverance Belt because it gives us Onslaught and it gives us 1% increased attack damage for whatever is lowest out of our armor and evasion, and that's per 200. There's lots of different ways you can build this character. You could swap Haste out for Grace so that you have a ton more evasion. You'll lose a bit of damage, but then it's lessened by the fact that your Perseverance Belt gives you a bit more damage. But it's only increased damage, and we already have a ton of increased attack damage. So it's not a massive amount, but if you were more bothered about damage, you could put in Grace, which will make you more tanky and give you a little bit more damage, but you lose the speed and the attack speed of Haste. All the other gear is rare. So we have a bow, which is the usual elemental bow. You buy a fractured base, you spam elemental essences until you hit the 3, and then you either prefixes cannot be changed, scour, and multi-mod your crit chance and attack speed, or you take a gamble, you lock the prefixes, and then you Assling or use a Veil Chaos Orb to try and get strength and intelligence and crit chance. I would never recommend Bow Chaos because if it fills the bow, you've got to start again. And when you roll in for your end game bow, you might use 100 essences to get to this point. So it'd always be either Ashleen or you can just multi-mod. There's not a huge amount of difference. The helmet, we're just going for armor and evasion resistances. The reason I've got strength intelligence is because I think I actually need it to proc determination because I think I'm using a level 21. I am, which is 159 strength. So if I got rid of it, I've not got enough strength. So obviously if you've balanced the character better, you can have something else on this suffix. So extra chaos resistance. The amulet, I bought fractured all attributes, again, because attributes you're going to be a little bit starved of. I've anointed high voltage, probably not needed because I'm pretty sure I hit crit cap. So this could be something else. I just wanted essentially crit multi and attributes and life. That's what I wanted for this. So I spammed crit multi essences until I hit a decent amulet. The quiver, again, I'm just looking for flat damage, crit multi, attack speed, down to bows. I'm not actually bothered about life. It just happened that I rolled life on this. Again, we'll go through the crafting if this comes out as a build guide. But there's lots of videos online about how to craft endgame quivers. They're really, really easy. The rings, I'm just looking for life, resistance, LE damage with attacks if I can get it, and then space to craft non-channeling skills. And then here again, this one I've gone for chaos resistance. This is just a fractured life ring, spam chaos in harvest until you hit something you like, and then you craft your non-channeling skills. The gloves, I've got a big fractured accuracy base just so I don't have to worry about accuracy. I don't have to worry about putting masteries in to give me more. And then I think on this, I just spammed the zeal essences until I hit life. So in these boots, I essentially need to get around 40% avoid ailments. So I've crafted very cheap implicits with the Eldritch currency. I think these are both lessers. They are fractured movement speed base, and then you spam deafening essences of loathing to get elemental ailments until you get something you like and you can craft life on it. They're not particularly expensive, super easy to craft. The body armor on this one is where I wanted to get big armor and evasion so I can then take the mastery that gives 15% life. It also means when we're running things like determination or grace, it gets buffed up massively by the fact we've got big base armor. So on this, there was two ways I looked at crafting this chest. One of them is dense fossils. You just spam it because you're not going to get any life. You're going to get defenses. And I just spammed it until I got big armor and evasion. Essentially, that's it. And it allows me to take the mastery that gives me 15% more. You could also maybe go to harvest and try defense reroll. But I like the delve option because it guarantees you're not going to get any life modifiers. So then you know that you're going to be set for your mastery. And that's kind of it for the gear. It's quite expensive because you have to craft these with probably lots of essences or lots of fossils, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. And it is something where every piece of gear you can craft yourself. And none of these fractured items were particularly expensive. I think the amethyst ring was the only one that cost any money. Crit multi-quivers were dirt cheap. Movement speed boots were cheap. Accuracy gloves were definitely cheap. So overall, there isn't anything other than the bow that should cost you an absolute ton of currency. The quiver can end up costing you sort of 3 to 4 divines if you want to finish it because you start having to use a metacraft. But overall, it's not a particularly expensive setup and it works exactly how I wanted the build to work. Super, super quick. As long as I actually pay attention and don't fall asleep, I'm never going to die. And it's going to get me through the map, kill the boss, and make as much currency as I want depending on what league mechanic I want to run. So we'll just cover off the implicits that I recommend for the build. So for the helmet, you definitely want reduced mana cost of attacks because I like my builds to be really smooth. So I like my mana to basically never go down. You could go without this and maybe run the life mastery that uses life as well as mana for your skills, and you can roll something else. But I really like that on a helmet. On your other implicit, fizz damage taken as far is probably overkill. You could maybe get some mana reservation on here to make your mana a little bit better. Chest piece, definitely recommend these two. Determination, increased aura effect, and increased effect of non-cursed auras. Or if you want to go even faster, haste has increased aura effect, would also work really well. The boots, you need both of these. Chance to avoid LE ailments you're going to need to cap, and action speed is definitely the best implicit you can get on your boots. The gloves are going to be dependent on what content you like to do and what your stats are like. So if we check my accuracy, I am 100% and 100%. So I don't need that global accuracy. So I could reroll that to something like spell suppression. For your other implicit, I'd recommend either getting rage on hit or attack speed. Rage on a hit, you ideally need a bigger mod. So this is greater and it's every 1.1 seconds, but we are zooming through maps in like a minute to a minute and a half. So you're not going to have your full rage until you've almost finished the map. So if you are, speed mapping, rage is probably good, but you're going to want to push it up to maybe grand or even the level higher. Attack speed is also a really good option. The reason I say it depends on what content you do is if you do something like Harvest or you do Expedition, you're going to lose your rage when you go and plant your explosions or you go into Harvest and actually prop the monsters. You're going to lose your rage. I would only do rage if you're doing a mapping strategy where you never stop and there's no downtime. You can't go wrong with either. I wouldn't fret about it too much. I like rage because it just builds up your attack speed and your movement speed over time. In terms of Pantheons, this is definitely the one you want to run, Solar Lunaris, because you get more movement speed when there's enemies nearby and more fizz reduction. And then because I'm always putting Exile on my maps, I'm always going to run Burning Ground just to make sure I don't come unstuck to the degen from Burning Ground. Bandits, you're obviously killing all 2 skill points is massive. It could be a dual socket, it could be 15% life. It just far outweighs any of the other options. So if you wanted to create the character, I would 100% recommend following what I've done. It's super, super fun if you just want a mapper. Then if you decide you want to boss, you would swap haste out for something like anger or wrath that gives you more damage. You would respec these points here and probably go into elemental damage here. And then that gives you a much, much bigger single target boost on bosses. So what we'll do is just run a quick Guardian map as an example of what it's going to be like if you decide you want to do a rotation for your Guardians and you don't want to respec your tree, just to show you what it's like. I would say that if you're going to do everything in the speed setup, roll your maps a little bit carefully. Try not to give them too much extra monster life, 27% should be okay. And try and avoid the mod where it's 60% less effective your auras, because that reduces our defenses by an absolute ton and our offense by a little bit as well. Other than that, you should be okay. Just avoid like double fizzes extra mods. Baran is probably the most dangerous because his attacks or spells overlap. So I have no idea if we can just stand there and tank this, but we're about to find out. I've already got him on Maven. There's not much point doing Exile, so we'll just run the map normally. So this is probably another example of where rage might not be great, because by the time you go into Baron's Arena, you've probably lost a lot of it. This is also like a boss rush map, so we are very likely to have very little rage by the time we get there anyway. So you see the extra monster life for this sort of thing does make it a little bit more tricky when we're not bothering about specking for defenses. So we'll see how we get on with just standing here. I mean, obviously we can move away from that. It would be silly to lose the mana. So we'll keep going. So yeah, it was okay. Most, as I say, bosses and encounters, you are just going to have to stand there and spam your skills. You've just got to look out for, huge telegraphed attacks that, yes, you might be able to tank them, but is it worth risking it when you can just move out of the way? It makes no sense. But yeah, super straightforward Guardian map with the speed setup. They're saying if you were going to do a Guardian map run where you might want to do 12 maps and 3 invitations, then I'd definitely respec your tree to get some more damage. So that's kind of it for the video. I just wanted to quickly touch on map mods before I sign off. The only map mod you 100% can't run is Ellie Reflect. Now, even if you do get awakened Ellie damage with attacks, we still have our Mana Force Arrow setup, which is going to do quite a lot of damage because Burning Arrow hits for a ton, and those mods are very, very likely to kill you. Fizz Reflect, obviously not a problem. We don't do a lot anyway, and we have a ton of Fizz mitigation. If you are running things like invitations, I would avoid the 60% reduce effect to curse auras and just avoid combinations of tank mods. So don't do enemies take reduced damage from crit and enemy has X more life, because it's going to take you much longer to get through it, but you should still be able to do it. They're really the only mods that you need to be aware of. Everything else you should be able to run fairly comfortably. That's it for the video. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and see you in the next one.